and you're listening to a WNBA State of Mind. Stay tuned for a short commercial break. And you're listening to a WNBA State of Mind, the sports podcast for women about things that matter to us and more. So come join us on your podcast platform. Welcome everybody. It's the 10th episode and I'm here with my girl Anuka Brown, all right, who is the Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer for one of my favorite places, UNICEF. I could not wait to get that box. UNICEF USA in Brooklyn, New York. She was a star at Northwestern University women's basketball team. I remember this. She was selected to the All Big Ten team 3 times, right? And was named the Big Ten Player of the Year twice. She also holds the all-time conference record for scoring 2,307 points. And she also snatched 951 boards, damn near 1,000. And in 1985, she led all Division I women's basketball players nationwide in scoring with a 30 bomb and put a .5 after that, y'all. She graduated from Northwestern with a degree in communications and was selected to the school's Athletic Hall of Fame in 1993. According to an article published by Northwestern University, Brown may be pound for pound one of the most accomplished athletes in the school's history. Anuka, welcome to a WNBA State of Mind, where we mainly discuss basketball, but we love other sports. Today, we of course have an all-star cast of ballers, which makes for a great show. Anuka, welcome to the show. What's up, sis?
Thank you. I'm so grateful. Just grateful to be having this conversation with you, and I appreciate all that you're doing to lift the sport and continue to build it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've spoken several times before we even turned this into a podcast, and I'm just so appreciative that the fact that some of my last conversations with Medina was about you, and we were talking about those moments. As before, I asked you to take us back. You're chief officer for UNICEF, but you were an outstanding player. Take us back a little bit. Take us back in time.
Take us back. So, as you know, we are babies of Title IX. Only reason I stand here today with these accomplishments is because of that legislation that started to level the playing field and gave me opportunities to play. Right, that first team I played on, I wore a skirt. I didn't even wear shorts. Wore a skirt, and just it just paved the road. And I had the privilege of playing in the very first NCAA women's basketball championship tournament. Way back when, the 1982 tournament was the first one for the NCAA. Obviously, the women of the AIAW opened the floodgates for us, built the path that should be acknowledged, must be acknowledged. But that taking me back is really, I can't say enough what a privilege I have to stand on this current platform, because I stand on the shoulders of all those women that paved the road before me. So Northwestern was fantastic. Loved the game. Really just honed my skills at Northwestern, but had so many incredible women on my path that paved the path for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you, in 85, and it could have been, the beginning of 84 when we went to go play you guys, and it was cold up in, oh man, it was cold. And, you had our team arguing at halftime. Here we were on the way to winning the national championship, and Anuka Brown was busting our tails. first half you was just killing us. Go in the locker room with Dina Dixon, Tracy Claxton, screaming. Tracy's like, "Oh hell no! Oh hell no! Somebody better get her!" And you know how Tracy's voice, "Oh, somebody better get her! Oh hell no!" So, we come out, we specifically zeroed in on you. We didn't care who else scored. We just had to slow you down. You were rolling. People don't understand. There's not a lot of people, and I'm gonna have to do my homework, who averaged a 30 bomb. You are one of those people. You were putting up numbers. Crazy.
Well, I think it was motivation. It really was motivation, right? That year before I tried out for the Olympic team. I didn't make the Olympic team. But let me tell you, the US has so many good players. So I wasn't bitter, but it just showed me I needed to get better. I had to. And we did, that was that was a year. I think they went to that last year. I don't know if it was last year they went to the 3-point line. I scored all the points and there wasn't a 3-point line.
Wow.
And so everything about, yeah, exactly. So that was the motivation. That summer, let me tell you how I changed it. That summer, I did nothing. Sometimes when you work so hard and then you just decide you're going to breathe, that summer, all I did was I went to playground courts and just played for fun. And a lot of the summer, that's what I did, but I wasn't putting up like 40, 50, 30, shots a day, but I was running. I remember I was running this place, Mount Trashmore in Evanston, Illinois, just running, just so got my body in shape. So it was about getting more in shape, but that really is the difference. When I just kind of put the ball away, it was just like, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to take a deep breath, because everything was about, I want to make this Olympic team. But then when that didn't materialize, I was like, okay, what's next? And then I relaxed. Once I relaxed, the whole game changed. And so that's a lesson for young people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand that you burn out. I felt that way after my freshman year. And I didn't go and, play USA basketball. Coach Stanley was feeling some type of way about that, and Coach Summit too. They were looking at me like, "Excuse me," and I was like, I need a moment. We were going so hard that year, and we only had 8 players that we won the championship with. So, we were on a mental and a physical burn, and so I burned out, and that's the first time I probably ever recognized that in my life, because I'm always going. A few moments of burnout, but not too many. Leading up to the next question, as you were talking about, giving advice to the youngins, you graduated with a master's in marketing communications from Florida State. Talk about the importance of education, all right, to prepare athletes for corporate America, because, it's a hard transition for us to go from, bouncing the ball to corporate America. What am I going to do? What are my hard skills? What are my soft skills? Talk about, that transition a little bit.
Absolutely. But I do want to go back to one of the things you talked about, right? You talked about something that the whole burnout piece, right? Wait, that was 40 years ago. And now we're only just starting to recognize and demystify mental health as an issue, particularly in our communities with athletes, and just being okay with not being okay. Right? That's such a huge lesson, because when we were going to school, it's like, no, we didn't really talk about it. You just push through it. And it does come at an expense to your health, like your internal physical health. But, the question you asked about just the transition and the importance of gaining those soft skills, I think the collegiate space has gotten to this place where young people don't have the opportunity to go out and do internships like they used, like the rest of the student population. And they have to carve out opportunities for them to go and get those experiences so they can develop those hard skills and soft skills in the workplace, right? And so unless there's more of a demand for that, it's not going to happen. And our young people need it to happen, especially in our communities where we don't, I didn't break bread at my dinner table with like 2 parents that worked in white collar jobs. My father worked in a brewery. My mother worked in community development, nonprofit space. So, when you are sitting at the dinner table and you were talking, how to negotiate a salary, how to negotiate a contract, stocks, bonds, when you get that, in those families that have both parents or one parent in white collar, that's different. So you come up with an added advantage. So for many families that don't have that, we need those opportunities to do those internships. We need those opportunities to be mentored throughout our early careers. And it's not about just, let me get this job, but how do I keep this job? How do I go in and present myself and be able to confidently brag about my skills every year, like my white counterparts are able to do very eloquently? Those are things that have to be learned and taught, and they're taught that way through mentorship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You hit the nail right on the head with that. I love
Mm-hmm.
that concept, internships. And people don't realize how much of a sacrifice we make as athletes and all of the time that we give up to be honing our careers, in the end. And when people say, well, how can an organization be responsible for you after you get finished? I gave up most of my time. When I retired, most of my friends had already been 15, 20 years in the workforce. I never even been on an interview. So here I am, 37 years old, and don't even know how to be on an interview. People have no idea, the importance of things.
Oh yeah.
If you shed light on that, because these are viable programs that need to be available to players, not just on the college level, but also on a pro level where it's absolutely needed. Because once you're getting ready to go into the workforce, it's totally different. And to that point, the schools have a responsibility to uplift their student athletes, right? So I always talk about it's not the next 4 years, it's the next 40 years. And you think about what student athletes sacrifice, right? My daughter was a student athlete also at Northwestern. She played lacrosse. And so she, as she finished, she said, wow, I love that experience, but I really didn't have an opportunity to really truly be a student. Wow.
And so when you think about it, she ended up going to get her master's degree. And I think at that point she was able to be more of a student, but just think about it. Most student athletes are scheduled from 7 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night for something or another, whether it's studies, skills, or, physical training, the sports psychologist, there's just training table. There's so much scheduling of athletes that they don't necessarily get the opportunity to truly be students on campus and interact with the rest of their campus students. So when you graduate, I do believe that the schools have a responsibility to lift you up in a variety of ways, whether it's helping you find a job, because when you think about it's not about just graduating them, but what are they actually doing 10 years out? Like that's when you think about the accountability. Part of the accountability is graduating them, but graduating them with a skill set that allows them to really turn it on and do well, and then being accountable to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason why I say you're hitting it all over the place, but it's not just a place that it should happen in the university. It should also be happening in pro sports, because we're mad young, graduating from college and then coming in. Now in my case it was different because we already had the ABL and a couple of things going on. When I came in, I was much older, but still at the same time, there was a responsibility to make sure. And we used to have those internship programs that they put together with the sponsors, and you can go and intern, and they had paid internships. I have no idea what happened to that concept. It was actually Renee Brown and someone else, Pamela Wheeler, who were responsible for those programs that need to be brought back. I remember Pam Wheeler and Renee, and they did Renee, I hope you have an opportunity to talk to her. She just is, you talk about one of the pioneers. Yeah. Like she for all the right reasons, she gets it, and she knew what she was doing and why. The why is so important, and so much of that when we step into these opportunities where we have where we are in positions of influence. The real story of who you are is what are you willing to do with that influence? Not just like I'm going to bank this, I'm going to make this my, this is my path to this, but what are you doing and what legacy are you leaving behind for women that come after you? And Renee's one of those. Like that program that you talked about,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it's as example, when I was with the NCAA overseeing championships for the women's division 1, 2, and 3, one of the most impactful programs we did was that program that brought women in to the actual championship. Women who were it was called for student athletes by student athletes, and gave them opportunities to work on the championship in different capacities so that they could learn, like, this is how you enable a championship. These are the operational functions that are involved in the championship. Here's some of the marketing, here's the ticketing. So they get a taste of what the business is behind the sport. If they haven't, if they're interested in sport administration, we've now exposed them to it. And that's a legacy program that now still exists today in many of the championships. But that's like this exposure that we have, because a lot of women finish their sports, they have no interest because they don't necessarily see themselves in those roles, and we desperately need them in those roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Nail on the head one time. Now we're going to take it back to you as we talk about other people and advocate for the athletes that are out there. I mean, UNICEF is a fantastic organization. I remember fundraising as a kid. Like I used to, with that boxing, whoever brought back the most change, and my mom would get all into it, and I'd be like, Mom, the box is halfway full, and she'd go in her change and just put all her change in there, so that I could win something or whatever. Fantastic organization, what they do for people and feeding the hungry, and I'm sure that they do so many other things. What exactly do you do? I know it's just what exactly?
So my current job, and as I serve in a chief advocacy and engagement officer for UNICEF USA. And so in that role, I oversee all of the work that our volunteers around the country do to support and educate the American public on UNICEF's work around the globe. And that comes in the form of advocacy. And so what we do is we train our young volunteers to have meaningful conversations with their individual representatives in Washington. So during August recess, when all of the senators come back to their home districts, our volunteers will go and meet with them and talk to them about the essential work that UNICEF does around the globe. And because we get funding from the US government, and so when that senator goes back to, or congressman goes back to Washington, they go back knowing, oh, okay, this is really important to my constituents in my home district. And so more of recent, we're now teaching, as this kind of, we've seen this explosion of youth activism all over the world, right? In the last 3 years, whether it's Greta Thunberg or Malala or Black Lives Matter in this country, you think about, like, these are all movements that are anchored by the voices of young people. And so our role in that is it's one thing to have voice on these issues, but teaching them how to have meaningful voices for policy change is the real essence of the work in the advocacy and engagement space. And so whether it's UNICEF clubs, right, those clubs that we have on campuses around the country, high schools and campuses around the country, we're enabling young people to have voice around issues that matter to them. And so more of recent, we're now going down this path that helps young people understand their rights, right? We're the only country in the world that has not ratified the Convention of the Rights of the Child, right? This idea of every child has rights. The United States is the only country in the world that has not ratified it. And so we're talking to young people and educating them about their rights. The reason I bring that up is because when you think about individuals like Malala, I have this picture of her when she was 10 years old, and she was living in the Swat Valley of Pakistan. And so when you think like, this is like Taliban country, right? They don't want women and children to be educated. And there's a picture of her sitting at a UNICEF sponsored event where she is having meaningful conversations and talking to her about what she wants improved with members of their district government. This is her at 10 years old. This is like 6 years before she was shot. And I bring this up because she was raised in a UNICEF-enabled, rights-respecting environment. And so Malala didn't just become Malala. She became Malala because she was educated at a young age about her rights. Same with Greta Thunberg. All of these young people that you see rise into these positions, they are being raised to understand what their rights are. And so when you translate that to what we're doing in the United States, it's not just about having voice around issues that are global, it's also teaching these young people to have voices around things that matter to them, right? How do you change and enable changes in your own communities on everything from issues on policing in communities to the demand for mental health in schools around your community, to ensuring that they're no longer food deserts. So demanding that at the municipal level, policies are made to improve the lives of young, vulnerable children in the communities. And that's the work that we do. And then the other piece that I'm involved in is humanitarian emergencies. And so if there's a sudden onset emergency in the United States, I consider COVID a sudden onset emergency, and we enable programming to support that. One of the most important and one of the programs that I'm probably the most proud of is the work that we're doing in tribal nations in the Southwest, in Navajo Nation and the White Mountain Apache, which is rooted in mental health, and also in inner city New York, Black and brown communities that were ravaged by COVID, and teaching young first-line responders how to talk about mental health interventions in communities of color, because we know that we want to demystify it, make it and normalize the importance of getting mental health support. I can't hear you.
I know, I was on mute. I was like, yes, we definitely need to normalize mental health in the Black community. And just taking it back to something that you had mentioned, about, me being conscious enough to know that, I experienced burnout. The reason why I experienced burnout is I have to accredit that to Marianne Stanley, who was conscious enough to know that there's no way in the world that we could be successful and win a championship if we didn't get along and if our mental stability wasn't on point. So she and she hired a woman whose name was Lynn Siegel, who I still use to this day. She was our team psychologist. And so I always knew since the age of 17, that I needed to sit and talk to somebody. And I always, even as an adult, would say to somebody, hey, listen, I think I need to talk to somebody, because this is bothering me a little bit too much, or I might be carrying this anger a little too long, or I'm carrying this grief a little too long. There's one thing in the Jewish community that I love, and it's their mourning period. It's 7 days of mourning. That's what they do.
Yes, Shiva, yes.
Shiva. And they are taught that if you take that pain beyond 7 days, it becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your soul. And so I'm reading a book right now, and it's called The Garden of Enuma. That's what I'm reading right now. And it's written by a rabbi. And so I always, like on the spiritual side, I try to take it beyond, to really understand myself and find my path. So I try to read a book like that at least once every 6 months, in between all the other stuff that I'm ingesting on social media. And so you got to stay spiritually grounded. But that's absolutely awesome that you even brought that out of me. I don't even know. I know I kind of went off on a whole nother tangent, but it really is important, your mental health, your mental and spiritual health, to have somebody and surround yourself with those people that can notice, other than your mom, because mom is always going to go, what's the matter with you? You need to have other people around you that'll go, hey, listen, you're not sure what's going on. And if you don't want to talk to me, go talk to her. Hey, listen, you can borrow my mom at any point in time. She's good.
That's so true. That's so true. And I think that I think in the context, in a post-COVID environment, after what we saw happen to George Floyd, the impact on that in organizations, nonprofit, corporate spaces, it's having the dialogue and the willingness to have dialogue around issues of racism has come at a cost to a lot of people, particularly Black and brown people in positions of influence, because there's an expectation that you are going to try and move your organization forward. And not every organization is ready for that. And so I would also offer, you talked about it, and we've seen some of the phenomenal athletes recognize it, that it's okay to not be okay, because what we've seen transpire over the last few years, what's happening in our communities, what's happening to our communities, it comes at a toll. It's a lot to carry.
Yeah. It really is. Definitely is the life of an athlete, and but we can handle it. We handle it, and then you line yourself up with those things that can help you handle it, especially during those times when things don't exactly the way you want them to go. And so, how engaged are you in basketball? What do you think about today's game? We're winding down. I want to make sure I got 2 more questions for you. What do you think about today's game? Like, it's evolved. I mean, are you in there? Are you watching it? Are you still a gym rat? But you're a gym rat from the couch. You know how it is.
I watch it. Let me tell you, having been a vice president of championships, I didn't get to enjoy it the way I get to enjoy it now. Now, when the playoffs, when there's a WNBA game on, or the playoffs start, or when there's an NCAA playoff, the championship round start, I make my nachos. I sit down and I can't wait. I cannot wait to watch the game, but I do watch it throughout the season. Here's what I'll say. Student athletes are better than ever before. They are incredibly skilled. I love to watch them. The pace of the game. I love some of the rule changes. The one thing that continues to be of concern is just the fundamentals. The emphasis on fundamentals, and what you learn at the high school level. I really hope that there's better alignment over time. And I don't know how you get back to this with the high school coach, right? When you recruit a kid, when I was coming up, they recruited me through my high school coach. My high school coach, who was typically a teacher in the school, right? In the Catholic schools, you're a teacher and you also coach the team. These are the individuals who knew more about you than anybody, right? They spent the day with you, not the AAU coach, right? And not that the AAU coach is bad. There just needs to be a balance. And I would love to see us restore some more significance back to that high school coach. But as far as the game is concerned, it's growing. Student athletes are coming in more skilled than ever before. Coaches are getting better. You're seeing more parity, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, especially in the women's game, it's just all about evolution right now as far as the women's game is concerned. And we have no other place but to go but up. It's 25 years as far as the WNBA is concerned. And I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday on my last podcast where I had I did a collaboration with another podcast and called Capture the Game podcast. And I could tell you, it was such a great conversation just to talk about and revisit a lot of the stuff that we're talking about right now, especially as far as the game is concerned. And that leads me right to the question that I want to ask you. Okay, so you work for the NCAA, right? Let's talk about open sponsorships and its effect on Title IX. We hit on this on the telephone, and I told you, hold your tongue, because people need to understand, it's a positive step, but at the same time, it can nail us.
Oh, it can. And let me tell you, I think there has been a concerted effort to roll back Title IX for many years. When Title IX legislation was what came into play, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Oh. Just turn your
I'm sorry. So I'm going to start that question over just so you hear it.
Yeah,
so
to play. That's
when Title IX was enacted in 1972, there was never an expectation that it would have the far-reaching impact in sport that it did. right? I think most people thought it would just be focused on education. If I have a chess club in school, you have a chess club for women. If you have a chess club for men. So, the fact that it has leveled the playing field, and we know that 95% of women who sit in C-suite positions today played organized sport, right? When you think about the far-reaching impact and how it has lifted so many women, and with that, and with the dialing back of many other rights that we're seeing that belong to women, I'm very concerned about the impact of Title IX. But when you begin to think about it, collegiate players earning money in any way, if they become an employee of the university where they're receiving money from the university, it potentially makes them an employee of the university and could have devastating impacts on Title IX, which means once you're an employee of the university, you're no longer bound by Title IX. So it gives universities potentially the opportunity to roll back sports, right? And, a lot of people talk about how Title IX has had this negative impact on men's sports. Well, I would want people to think about, it's not about the impact that Title IX has had on men's sports. If colleges and universities would approach Title IX as it was meant to be approached, meaning invest in women's sports, don't dial back and cancel men's sports, but invest in more women's sports. If they would do that, you wouldn't have this backlash of the impact on men's sports. But getting back to your specific question, the idea we need to be able to monetize, right? When you see coaches that are making $9-10 million, why shouldn't student athletes have an opportunity to monetize their sport and their brands? We just need to be really careful that there is no creep and it doesn't open up an opportunity for us to see a rolling back of Title IX.
Absolutely. And you're listening to WNBA State of Mind. I got my girl, Nuka Brown, straight killer at a Northwestern University. I appreciate you being on the show and you giving us that knowledge, taking us back, giving us some history. Give me your 5 favorite players that you play against before we talk.
5 play. Well, first of all, you. Oh my God, you. I have to say, my girl Yvette Angel, loved her game. Rosetta Guilford.
Wow.
Rosetta Guilford from Cheney. I said Yvette Angel from Ohio State. Marilyn Stevens from Temple. Right? Talk about like those incredible women. Let's see, another one I played against who just I can't think of the girl's name. I would say Nancy Lieberman. She was a killer. I have to give a shout out to Lynette Woodard, who I just think is just one of those. I can't say enough about Lynette. Hands down, greatest player ever. I'm gonna leave that there. Hands down, greatest player ever.
Wow, listen, you are not the first person to say that, and every person that I have most people that I have a conversation with, all right, say hands down, Lynette Woodard was a problem. Drop on a dime, stop on a dime, pull up jumper, keep going up, and you think she ain't coming back down. So that was from Medina Dixon, quote straight out of her mouth. All right, when we were in the OBX for Labor Day weekend. Sis, take us out of here. Tell us, okay, how can people follow you? Where are you? How can they follow UNICEF? How can they?
Well, you can follow me at New Coops. I'm on Twitter at New Coops. UNICEF USA is also on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm also at New Coops on Instagram. But here's what I would say. You know what? I would just say, follow women. Do whatever you can to uplift women and uplift young girls. We so desperately need it at this point. I will tell you that COVID has set young girls back a decade. The progress that we've made has set us up. When you think about globally how women have been taken out of school, they haven't gone back to school. Millions of girls are missing. They're no longer in school as a result of COVID. So my message to everyone is, if you care about women, uplift women, support women's sport. Women's sport changed my life, fundamentally changed my career trajectory. And I feel I have a responsibility to look back, reach back, and any opportunity I get to impact the lives of young people. So support the WNBA, support the NCAA women's sports, and just hands down, support women and understand what's happening in your career, in your communities, what's happening at the top line federal policy level. Understand what's happening and your impact, the importance of voting and participating in the process, because women need to make sure that they hold on to the rights that people lived and died for, fighting for. And so I leave you with that. There's a lot of work to do, but we have to always be mindful that there's an alternative energy that is trying to set women back. And that's the thing we have to push back against.
We're going to take it here and there with that one. And I can tell you, you're absolutely right about our young women. Okay, we battle obesity, we battle suicide, and now we're battling and having to deal with our girls becoming gang members. And so we're going to take it out of here with that. We'll come back and revisit, sis. I appreciate you being on the show. WNBA.
So appreciate you.
Gets hotter.
Appreciate you. Keep fighting. Keep fighting.
Yes, no doubt.